Well, hey everyone, from the rooftop studio here in Lisbon live. This is World Youth Day Rocks. Thanks for joining me. I'm Dario Mobini from worldyouthday.com. We are just enjoying this atmosphere here in Lisbon. It is Sunday, and we are 2 days away from the start of World Youth Day Lisbon 2023, and the crowds have started to arrive. So just today, most of the pilgrims who are at the days of the diocese have started now making their way towards Lisbon. And so you can see the crowds have started to mobilize all over the city. Here we are just hanging out from the rooftops, but I can tell you, like, it's getting loud. It's becoming very full. The metros have already started to embrace the fact that it's going to get really packed very soon. And tomorrow we're going to be at the airport watching it all unfold as many more pilgrims from around the world are arriving. For that reason, today we have a special guest. We're going to be talking about how to spiritually, physically, psychologically, and emotionally prepare for your arrival in Lisbon. Come on over, Dr. Aaron Davis. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
All right. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, my friend.
Good to be here.
So, Dr. Aaron Davis is a doctor, medical doctor. He works for a military base in San Diego, California. Now, a lot of pilgrims are going to be getting off this flight after having been on it for probably, if you're from Europe, 3 hours, right? 4 hours tops. And then those others who are coming from internationally, probably 6 to 8 to 9 hours, unless you're coming from the Orient. Like for those of you guys coming from China or Australia or the United Arab Emirates or Bahrain or even just Saudi Arabia in general or Africa, you're probably going to be on the flight for 11 hours. What happens to someone's body as they get off a flight? Like a long flight for that particular matter. What goes on in their mind?
Sure. Well, it depends on how old they are. So if it's somebody who's 15 years old, they're going to bounce off and run around and make us look terrible, right? They're going to shoot off the plane, run out, have no problems at all. If it's one of our older priests, they might be having some fluid that's settled into their legs during the flight. They might have some cramping in their legs, and anything in between, right? So I think if the people stayed hydrated on the plane, they're going to do a lot better than if they didn't. So that's lots of fluids. If they're avoiding alcohol on the plane, if they're avoiding really salty meals, that's going to be super helpful. One of the tips that can really help people who have problems with swelling on their legs, and that could be somebody who's 30 years old, that could be somebody who's 50 years old, is if they wear compression stockings. I usually recommend to my patients who are younger and more athletic that they can get ski socks. So they go up just below the knee or sometimes above the knee, and they're made out of merino wool, and they can be really comfortable, and that can keep you from having a lot of swelling. You'll feel a lot fresher when you get off the plane if you manage your circulation like that.
So physically, it's important to drink lots of waters, not necessarily salty foods, but start walking as soon as you get off the plane, or stretch your legs, right? Move that circulation of the blood and so on. But what about the emotional aspect of it? I mean, a lot of people lose patience, right?
Yep.
You get off the plane, well, before you even get off the plane, you might probably be on the airport and you're still taxiing to the plane. And maybe the pilot says, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like it's going to be another hour by the time we get to the gate. And then the emotions start building and building and building. What do you suggest for someone who's has the patience is running thin at that point? They're tired, they're cranky, they didn't sleep so well. They probably had a terrible meal, or maybe a terrible experience, maybe delays. We know a lot of people who've had delays coming from the United States because of weather. So how would we be able to manage, I guess you could say, the emotional stress, the anxiety that is now piled on at the arrival? Granted, people are excited to be here, but at the same time, a lot of emotions are running in.
Sure. I think the thing to remember is that you're only in control of one thing, which is your emotions, right? You can't control how long it takes for the plane to get to the gate. You can't control how long it takes for everybody to get off in front of you. You can't control how quickly people are getting their luggage down around you. So I think just like all travel, this trip is unpredictable, right? You are limited with what you can manage. So I always recommend people a little bit of breathing exercises. You can do what we call box breathing, really easy. If you really feel like you're about to blow up and lose your mind, you can take a breath in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and hold it again for 4 seconds. We do that with some of our military forces. And they say that it works well. So,
yeah, because then, after they get off the plane, they get their luggage. God forbid you lose your luggage. That even compounds the emotions. But you're right. I mean, I think you made it clearly that we need to just take a deep breath. We're not in control of everything. That goes for like the buses who are picking you up for the transfer. Some of you guys are transferring by bus. Some people are transferring by Uber. Some people are taking the metro, right? And there's going to be a lot of things that are just not going to work out. And maybe you realize the metro station that you want to go to is not open because they closed it in preparations for World Youth Day. That adds on to more anxiety, more stress. Now, after they get settled in, after all that happens, all that anxiety goes through, besides taking a deep breath and besides like stretching the legs, what other suggestions do you recommend? Like besides good hydration you mentioned, what about foods though? What should they be eating on the first day of arrival?
Yeah, so it depends. I think if you're coming off of your time zone, it's a good idea to try and eat to this time zone. You're going to be very hungry. And sometimes that means if you're following your own food cycle, you're going to be waking up at 3 in the morning and trying to have a sandwich. So it's a good idea to just have a meal. That's why the airlines do it the way that they do. They're trying to get you on the cycle of eating here. But I mean, I'm going to recommend healthy foods, right? We're in Europe, so lots of good, healthy, fresh produce. You should be eating lots of vegetables. It's everything's very healthy to eat here, so there's not any real concerns about like food contamination like there might be in some places. Again, lots of water, but lean proteins, fish, some nuts, and it really, if you like find the nearest cafe, you're going to be able to get a good meal that probably meets all of those requirements. It's a good idea to just like push that schedule so that you're not trying to keep up with what you were doing back home, and it's going to make you feel again a little bit more fresh.
And now that you've been around in Lisbon for a couple days, what has been like your thoughts of Lisbon? First off, I mean, walking around, great, right? You've now started to relax. You put your body in the right cycle, right motion, right? We're focused on the experience that we're about to have here at Lisbon. What do you recommend for people getting ready for walking around the city? Because most likely people tomorrow will probably be walking around the city, kind of getting a checkout, getting your bearings right? How do we get the bearings right? How do we figure out our locations? What should we be paying attention to in details, especially now with a little sleep deprivation and the time zone change?
Sure. So things to know. Lisbon, like many other European cities, is very hilly. So you need to be prepared for the hills. So you might feel a little sweatier than usual. You might feel a little more exertion than usual, especially since you're off of your regular sleep cycle and you're not used to moving around that much after a couple days of travel. So be prepared to exert yourself a little bit. Be prepared to take some breaks while you're going up the hills. That there's no problem with going slower than most of the people in your group, especially if it's a mixed age group and there's a lot of young people. Take your time and take breaks. The other obvious thing with Lisbon is all the uneven surfaces that they have here. Again, European city, so pretty traditional type of cobblestone streets and also cobblestone sidewalks, which is new here. So some of the sidewalks, they're a bit canted, they're sloped a little bit, and they have a pretty polished surface to them with uneven stones. So be prepared that you might slip, you might trip. There's a chance you could fall. So keep an eye, since you're going to be tired and road weary, keep an eye on the road and kind of pay attention to your next step and 10 steps ahead of you so that you're not tripping over everything, spraining an ankle, and taking yourself out for the rest of the week that you spent so much time and effort to get here for. What
about remembering also the kind of like the big points of like what's going on around you? So like, oh yeah, that building, okay, good, because then you're aware. You have an awareness of where you just walked out of, yep, what you just passed, and most importantly, like where you're going. You're paying attention to details, because what if someone gets broken up from the group? Like I know you've seen this before. People at World Youth Day tend to do some weird things, like people holding each other's backpacks, right, and walking in a single file line, which, by the way, we recommend you not to do. Because one, what if someone needs to get crossed, or what if you block and you walk right in the way? Now we have to wait for 60 people to move around holding everybody's backpacks, right? Because nobody's paying attention where they're going, right? They're just going to follow the leader. Sometimes the leader doesn't even know where they're going. I think paying attention to like where your surroundings are, especially where you're staying at, right? I mean, like that's a key. Pay attention to where you're staying at, and then what should you be looking for? Like if you just moved into that area, I mean, obviously besides a pharmacy, what else should they be focusing on of like their surroundings?
Sure. So my habit whenever I travel quite a lot, whenever I go someplace, I try to figure out what the main road is near me. So I try to figure out if I kind of drift off, how do I find the major thoroughfare that is near me? So I kind of see what it looks like from different angles. I make sure that if I'm walking to go look for that pharmacy, or I'm going to take a peek to look for a cool bakery since I'm in Europe, or I want to get a cup of coffee, I'm always going to take the same route to start, and I'm going to start paying attention to what's branching off of that route. And that's going to be the base of the tree of knowledge that I'm building about the area around me. The other thing I'm going to do is look for obviously landmarks. As soon as I got off of the metro, when I came from the airport, I popped out and I saw a statue, and now every time that I'm in that area, I look for that statue and I look for the stores that are around. So even if you don't speak the language, there's a word you can pick out of that store name. And you can start to build a map in your own head. And the other thing is obviously like use your Maps app, whether that's Apple Maps, whether that's Google Maps, whatever you're using, and just start getting an idea of that picture of the map compared to what you're actually seeing with your eyes, and that's going to keep you on track.
I was going to say, speaking of apps, there's also the World Youth Day app, the JMJ Lisboa 2023 app, where they have a map, and actually it will connect you. So like if you're needing to go somewhere, particularly for the Campo Eduardo the 7th, or what we call the Parco de Encuentro, or Parque Tejo, or Campo de Gracia, right, where we go for the final site. I mean, the nice thing is like there is a map there. You could use that. Just be aware though that if you do use it on your phone, you're going to pay for data, right? So it might not be automatically free. Just make sure if you're talking to your parents or you're talking to your cell phone provider, make sure you're aware of that. By now, you should know whether or not you're going to use the app or the data, right? I mean, but the nice thing about like having a phone out, it's helpful, but you can find places with Wi-Fi, and there are plenty of cell towers now in the major sites to help the pilgrims to be able to get on data in the case that you are trying to figure out what's going on, where you are, and so on.
Yeah. And if you're using Maps, you can download Maps offline onto Google Maps, which is really helpful. So definitely get the major area that you're going to be staying in, as well as the rest of Lisbon. And then Apple Maps, if you visit an area, it will stay loaded onto your device for a little bit afterwards, a few days actually. So you can have some access to offline maps. One of the things you can do is take a screenshot of the map around your area, and then
cool, good point.
You'll know where to go. So
hey, you can also make save different spots that you go to, right? Like for example, if you realize your pilgrim food is only available right here by your lodging, you might want to just put star or saved location so that you can always go back to it on your map. I mean, that's a really good suggestion too to have on you, especially as you move around. The more familiar you become with Lisbon, the easier it will be for your experience to really be soaked in. And tomorrow, really, there's really nothing going on tomorrow with the exception of everybody getting to their lodging, right? I mean, that's really about it. If you picked up your registration already, tomorrow is the first day of using the World Youth Day Metro card. It is also the first day of grabbing meals off of the meal card, which is that QR code. And let me make a suggestion, something that I heard some people say this to me about the QR code, right? Do not take selfies with your QR code, all right? Especially with your QR code visible. I've heard people say that it's probably best to turn the card around so that way when you're taking the photos that the QR code is not in a photo, because there are people out there who can take your QR code and eventually take advantage of the fact that they can grab a meal directly out of your account. That account is associated to you. It's important that you keep that account safe and protected so that meals can go to you, because you're going to need to eat healthy. You're going to need to eat and hydrate. There's a lot of sun. Speaking of the sun, like what was today like, for example, just to give us a little insight?
Today wasn't as bad as it has been. Today was actually a little bit of a break. There was a little more shade and a little more breeze. Past couple of days, it's been hot. 3 days ago, it was really hot. So, you never know what you're going to get for the day. You don't know if it's going to be more of a gentle, moderate day, or if you're going to get a hot sun. So I think you need to prepare for both, depending on what it looks like when you walk out. It doesn't really matter because it can change in a couple of hours. So
yeah, I've noticed that too. I mean, it could be a bright sunny day, and then all of a sudden the clouds show up out of nowhere, and then it rained. My colleague and I were running around, our camera guy, we were running around, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it started raining. It's nowhere on the weather map that it said it was going to rain. It just appeared out of nowhere. And again, that's another perk of being close to the Atlantic Ocean. We're close to a body of water, and that could bring all sorts of interesting things in the morning or in the evening or in the afternoon. But either way, like, we're excited that World Youth Day is 2 days away. There's a lot of things that are happening in the city to prepare. The Campo de Gracia is almost ready. The Parque de Encuentro is almost ready. They've already started practicing. We've watched them practice their animation of the events. People are starting to flock the airport. People are already in the metros. We've already started seeing flags. Backpacks are being worn. This is about to become an amazing adventure here in Lisbon. Thank you for joining us on this live show. We'll have more coming up. Tomorrow we'll begin our continuation of these live stream videos with a bunch of guests throughout the time. And the whole point of these is to keep you engaged and informed of what is happening here in Lisbon. And for those of you guys watching from home, your own home, because you're unable to go, we'll try to give you guys teasers and little clips here and there so that you can see what's happening. And for those of you guys already in Lisbon and you're watching our shows, thanks for watching our shows, and I hope they help you really take on this experience in a whole new way. But the most important thing is, if you have not liked our page already, please do like our page. Follow us on Instagram. It's World Youth Day. World Youth Day Media is the handle for YouTube and Instagram. World Youth Day Com is the Facebook page. We'd love to post more photos and more activities of what's going on and keep you guys engaged. There's a lot of things happening here in Lisbon. From all of us at worldyouth.com, and thank you, Dr. Aaron Davis, for joining us. I'm Dario Mobini from Lisbon. God bless you guys, and see you soon.